Hello there! This video will show you how to create frequency distribution tables and graphs both manually and using the pivot tools and pivot tables function in Excel. This video will also show you how to create mean scale scores for multi-item survey measures, how to compute means and standard deviations using pivot tables and manually, and also how to use the standardized function to compute and compare z-scores. So this video will really give you everything that you need to complete your first Excel assignment. And this Excel assignment will give you an opportunity to get your hands on some real-world data that was actually published in real research. So you'll notice that we're going to be recreating some portions of a results and methods section from a real live journal article that you see cited right here. Take a minute to read over the learning objectives of this assignment and the study overview of your assignment, and then we'll be ready to move on to working through Excel to answer all the questions in this assignment. Okay, so let's just take a look at the data and get familiar with it really quickly before we start playing with the tools in Excel. So this data comes from Schroeder and, let's see, Epley in 2015, and they did a study looking at how a speech, like a vocal speech versus written words, would have an impact on recruiters' perceptions of their intellect and their hireability. So if you look at the data, you'll see that there were two different conditions that these recruiters were randomly assigned to. The audio condition required the recruiters to listen to the spoken word, and the transcript condition had them read the same exact thing that was in the audio, but just a written version of it. Then all of these recruiters rated the applicant that they either heard or read their speech on competence, how thoughtful they are, their intellect, how likable they thought the person was, and whether or not they had a positive or a negative impression. Notice that negative impression is reverse coded such that higher scores mean better, more positive impressions. Also, they rated how likely they would be on a scale from, I think, 0 to 10 to hire that particular candidate. They also measured the age of the recruiters and the sex of the recruiters. So if we look at the assignment, the first thing that I ask you to do is use the Countif function to determine the number of males and females in the sample. And you'll see that it's reported in the methods section for experiment 4. So there's tons of experiments in this article, and I will post this for you all to read. But we are really focused on experiment 4. So let's scroll down to that. We're at experiment 2. Let's go down to experiment 4. Oh, 3B. All right, professional recruiters. So we're basically going to use this raw data to confirm that there are in fact 9 males, and because there's 39 participants total, that means there should be 30 females in this data. And we're going to use the Countif function to determine the number of males and females in the sample. So just right here within, make sure you're saving all your work in Excel. You will be submitting this along with your assignment, so make sure you're saving everything you're doing here. It should look just like what I'm creating. So the way that you use the Countif function, and let's go ahead and put males equals and females equals. Let's scroll over a little bit. So we're going to use and I'm going to double click here just so it fits. We're going to use equals count. Just start typing it and you'll see Countif pop up. Double click that. And you'll see it asks you for the range and the criteria. So for the range, you just highlight all of the data for whatever variable it is you're trying to count the frequencies for. So all of this data. An alternate way to highlight this, instead of clicking and dragging, would be to click the first one, go down to the last one, hold the Shift key, and click the bottom, and it'll highlight everything in between. Then you put a comma, and we want to count males first. So just select any any cell that says male, and then hit enter. Hey, there's the 9 males. Equals, for females, count if, double click count if. Again, select the first female here, go down to the last cell in this data. Again, hold Shift and click to highlight everything in between, comma. Now we want to count the number of females. So now you can really just copy and paste this. So hit Control C to copy and just paste that right into there. Now I don't love the way this looks, so I'm going to highlight this, go to Layout, Auto Fit, Contents. That looks better. I'm going to scoot this over too. Okay, so now let's just again confirm we had 9 males. Awesome. So now we're going to use the charts tool to create the appropriate frequency distribution graph that displays this data right here. And I'm going to show you how to make sure that you label the X and the Y axis appropriately. Then we're going to paste it into this assignment. So if we go into Excel, kind of double click to get out of copy mode, just highlight your males and females and get rid of the equals because it'll keep the equals in the chart and you don't want that. So let's get rid of the equals. So just highlight this data, go to Insert. You want to use this column or bar chart, and there we go. Now we can edit this in Excel or in Word, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, hitting Control C to copy. I'm also going to scoot it over to get it out of the way a little bit. Get over here. So I hit highlight it, Control C to copy, or right click, copy. Go into your Word document, Control V or right click, paste. Now I'm going to make some edits to this chart, and the default was a bar chart, and that is appropriate. Think about why that is. Why would a bar chart be the best way to display sex, males versus females? So hopefully you realize that sex is a discrete variable. It's nominal and it's discrete, so we would use a bar chart to display the nominal data. It's just a category. There's no true numeric value to it. So now let's go up to the Design tab. Make sure your table or your graph is highlighted. Click on Design. Go to Add Chart Element, and we're just going to add a horizontal and a vertical axis label. So this is going to be sex. And then over here, we could say number of participants or number of recruiters. I'm just going to go with number of participants. Okay. Now, once you have this done, if you want to move it around and do stuff, then you want to click here under Layout Options and do Square. You can move it around and do whatever you want with it if you do that. Just make sure that you scoot that text, just hitting Enter here to get it out of here. I'm going to go ahead and shrink this a little bit. It's taking up too much room. Let's get it to a size I like. This got all wonky. Let's see if I can click it and drag it. Yeah, not too bad. Maybe make it a little bit longer so it looks nice. And just kind of play with the formatting. Also, if you go up to the Design tab, you can see there's all kinds of nifty built-in formatting that you can do for this. You can also change the colors. So I think I'm going to change it. Ooh, I like green. So I'm going to make it look like that. You play with it. Make it look however you like. All right. So now you've got number 2 complete. Now let's go ahead and do number 3. Oh, and real quick, just to show you, if you want to add any kind of labels, like data labels, you can have that here. It'll display the frequency for each. Just an extra tool that's nice. Okay, so now we are going to use the Pivot Tables tool to create a frequency distribution table for higher rating. Then we're going to copy and paste it. So let me show you. The Pivot Tables tool is really nice. Here we manually created a frequency distribution table, right? We did the Countif function. But now we can use Insert, Pivot Table, and then we're going to select just the higher rating. And you can just click the little K above higher rating to highlight all of your data. And make sure that we want to put this in a new worksheet. So make sure you select that and click OK. Now go ahead and right click here and rename this tab, and we'll say frequency higher rating, just to label it so we know what we're looking at here. And now what you want to do, make sure you're clicking into this pivot table field, grab higher rating, go down to values, grab higher rating and go to rows. And now you'll see all of the values for higher rating and how many times those appeared in the data set. You also see there's this blank thing here. Let's get rid of that. So we'll click this little box with an arrow pointing downward and go down and unclick the blank. It'll get rid of that. I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it into my Word document and then make some edits to make it look nicer. And I want you to do the same thing. So I'm just going to click right here. Again, Control-C copy, Control-V to paste. Now it's bothering me because it's not aligned with my number here, so I'm just going to click it and scoot it over. Now I want to show you how to do a couple of things. So I told you, use the table layout tool to center the text. So this is what that looks like. Click on the table, go up to layout, and then right here, see where it's like centered, align center? Click that. Then you can use the design tab to make it look however you want. So play with it, see what looks good to you. I kind of like this one. Maybe I should go with green so it matches my other one. Get back over there. Also, you want to change this from saying row labels to saying what it actually is, higher rating. And then here you could say number of recruiters with that, maybe even number of, recruiters with rating, or that provided rating. Maybe that's more descriptive. So essentially, this is your X, right? Your variable, and then this is your frequency. How many recruiters gave that hiring rating? And go ahead and keep your grand total here. This just tells you your sample size, confirming that you have 39 recruiters in your sample. Okay, now let's move on to number 4. We're going to use the pivot chart tool to create a frequency distribution graph for this higher rating. So let's go ahead and go back into Excel. If you just click anywhere in your table and you go up, make sure Analyze under Pivot Table Tools is selected, and then just click Pivot Chart. Column is the default, so let's go ahead and use that. And now let's take a look at this real quick and think about the appropriate way to display this data. Now I can edit this table in Excel or in Word. I'll show you how to edit it in Excel right now. And think about this. This is a bar chart, right? The bars aren't touching. Well, this is problematic because higher rating is technically on an interval scale. So we need to have a histogram displaying our data. So click on your table or your chart, go to Design, Quick Layout, and select the layout that has the bars touching, like that. Now this layout already has placeholders for our axis titles, so let's just go ahead and enter them right now. So this is going to be higher rating. And then what did we say here? We said number of recruiters. Let's just steal that. Control-C to copy. See if it'll let me do that in Excel. And Control-V to paste. Nice. Okay, you can get rid of this thing that says total. We don't need that. And then we just click on this graph, Control-C to copy, go into our Word document, Control-V to paste. Now notice that the chart is on a different page from the original question prompt, and I don't like that. So I'm going to click right before the 4 and hold Control and hit Enter, and it's going to create a page break for me. All right, so right now I've got everything labeled. I'm going to go for green though. It's kind of my theme right now. So I'm going to change my colors and do green. Again, I want you to design it however you want. Have fun, be creative, play around with it. So there's our graph. Nice. Okay. Now we are going to use the average formula to compute the mean scale scores for intellect rating. So go ahead and take a look at our original data. You'll see that I color-coded this for you, and the way I did that was I just highlighted this and then picked a color here, so that you'll notice that the intellect rating is going to be the mean scale score for these 3 items. And if you look at the journal article, it really highlights that for you in the results section. So it says the job candidates had greater intellect, or in other words, were more competent, thoughtful, and intelligent. And you see those items reflected here, right? Competence and thoughtfulness and intelligence. So I'm going to go ahead and create my mean scale score across those 3 items so that all the numbers here represent the mean or the average for each person across these 3 items. So I'm going to type equals AV and then find average. Double click it. And then I'm just going to highlight these 3 items. and hit enter. Now, luckily, Excel is smart, and I don't have to do that over and over again for each row. I can go here, go down to the little box at the bottom right, look for the plus sign, click and drag down, and Excel knows that I want to do that for every single row of data. And just to check to make sure everything went okay, I can click on this box, look up here, and confirm that it gave me the average for C3 through E3 for this row, and then C4 through E4 for this row. And you'll see that throughout. I just copied the formula down and used each row of data. So now we need to use the average formula to compute the mean scale scores for impression rating. You'll see in the journal article, positive impressions of the candidates, likable, positive, and negative impressions. So if we look here, you'll see those reflected in the raw items. So we're going to use the same process as before, but now we are going to use the impression scores. So equals AV, double click average, highlight those, and hit enter. Now just to demonstrate something, if you are trying to figure out an average for different columns that are adjacent, you can do it like this. So equals average, double click. Let's say I wanted to take the average of intellect and positive impression. I could just click this, comma, click this, and hit enter, just to show you how to do that. But that's not what I want to do. Average, and then likable, positive impression, and negative impression. And yet again, we don't have to do that for each column or each row. We can just click, wait for the little plus sign at the bottom right, drag down, and it does it for all of our participants. All right. So now let's pop back into our assignment. So now we're going to use the pivot tools or pivot tables tool to compute the mean and standard deviation for all three of our ratings. So the intellect rating mean scale score, the impression rating mean scale score, and then the hiring rating. And we're going to want to do that separately for the audio and the transcript groups. And what we're essentially doing is we're recreating these means and standard deviations that accompany these t-tests that are reported in the results. Now, we're not to t-tests yet, so I'm not going to show you how to do the t-test, but I am going to show you an easy way to figure out the mean and standard deviation for each scale for each group. So let's pop back into Excel, and we are going to, real quick, if we're going to use the pivot tables function, you have to either use all the data or data in adjacent columns. So I need to move this condition over to be next to my ratings. So I'm just going to right click on column L and select insert, and you'll see it creates a new column there. And I'm just going to highlight the condition, go to like the 4 arrow plus sign, click it, and drag it over so it's next to my ratings. Then I can just right click and delete this. So you want to go, again, we're going to compute the mean and the standard deviation for these 3 ratings based on condition. So you'll click insert, pivot table, and then you want to highlight the ratings and the condition. And I just click and drag on the letters representing the columns. And then click OK. Make sure new worksheet is selected. Real quick before I do anything else, I'm going to right click here, go to rename, and put MSD ratings by group. Labeling your tabs is going to help you a lot, keep you organized, and I expect when you turn in your Excel assignment that I can see something similar there to make it easier for me to grade. Okay, so I'm in here. Now what I'm going to do is because I need the mean and standard deviation, so you're going to take intellect rating, drag it down twice. Right now it's giving me the frequency. I'm going to show you here in a little bit how to convert this into means and standard deviations. So take impression rating, click it and drag it to values twice below what you already did. And then higher rating as well. Click it, drag it to the bottom of here. Okay, and then condition is going to be the basis of our rows. Also, before we get started, let's click here and get rid of the blank. Get out of here. Okay, I'm going to scoot this out a little bit more. So now you can see in this Values tab, everything says count of, right? We want it to be mean standard deviation, mean standard deviation. But in Excel, it's called average, but it's the same thing. So you can click this little arrow, go to Value Field Settings, and there's a whole host of options for you. Look at all these options. We are just going to go ahead and do the average for intellect, and then the standard deviation for intellect. Notice there's two different standard deviations. This is for the sample. This is for a population. We are working with a sample, so we're going to select that. And I'm just going to do this for each rating. So we want the average and the standard deviation. And then the average and the standard deviation, not the count. Now in the assignment, I tell you that I want you to round your values to the hundredths place, and that's because that's what they did in the article. So I'll show you how to do that using the Format Cells option in Excel. So let's scoot this over a little bit so we can see what's going on. Maybe make it a little smaller. So highlight all of your numeric values, right-click, go to Format Cells, select Number, and then just have it round 2 decimal places. All right, now we're ready to copy this and paste it and make some edits because it's kind of ugly right now. Control C to copy. Control V to paste. Notice that it doesn't even fit on the screen. So let's go ahead and highlight this real quick. And just to make it fit on the screen, go to Layout. Again, click the table, Table Tools, Layout, Auto Fit, Window, just so it fits. Eventually we're going to auto fit contents, but before we can do that, we need to have everything in view so that we can make edits. So let's go ahead and change this row labels to say condition. And then you'll see here, I ask you to edit the remaining column labels with M or SD and a subscript for the type of rating. So this will say M intellect, SD intellect. So let's make it happen. Change this to an M, go home. This is how you create subscripts or superscripts if that's what you want to do. Just click that, and we're going to put in intellect. It'll look pretty eventually, don't worry. Okay, I can just copy this intellect piece. Actually, I'll just copy the whole thing. Control copy, Control V, and change that M to an SD. All right, now we've got the mean impression rating. And I can just steal impression too. Haha. All right, I used Control X to cut. M, impression, and then I can just turn that into a subscript. And then I'll do the same thing I did before. Just copy this, change M to SD. Oh, look what happened. I'm going to highlight this and unsubscript it. And then this is going to be mean subscript higher. And this is going to be the standard deviation for the hiring rating. So Control C to copy, Control V to paste, change this into SD. Now it's starting to look better, but I want to go ahead and auto fit it to now fit the contents, not the window. See how it's taking up the whole window? Because earlier I selected Layout, Auto Fit Window. And now I'm going to select Auto Fit Contents. And it's just going to shrink up to kind of hug the data. I'm going to click and drag this over. And I can't help myself. I need to make it green. There we go. Click and drag over. Okay. Now I want you to use the table that you just created to answer A through D on your own based on the concepts that you've learned so far this semester. Now let's go ahead and move on to number 8, where you're going to be recreating this joint frequency distribution that's presented on page 888 of the journal article linked in the assignment description. So let's go ahead and go to Excel. And I'm just going to use the averages for this. So I'm going to copy this, Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and we just want our averages. So just Control C, Control V, Control C, Control V. And I'm going to highlight, and I'm going to change this to condition as well. So I'm just going to highlight this data, and I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to select the columns. And from here, I'm going to do a couple of things. So I want to add those error bars. You haven't learned about standard error yet, but it basically gives you some bars that represent kind of roughly where you think those ratings would fall in the population, right? So anywhere from here to here, the margin of error. Let's go ahead and get rid of this chart title. And I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste this into Word and make more edits to it. So Control C to copy, Control V to paste. And here you'll see that I want you to format the y-axis to go from 0 to 10 because that was the response options presented. And you don't want to make it look like people were overly positive by misrepresenting the full range of options. So you'll want to click on those numbers, right-click, and go to Format Axis. And make sure the minimum is 0 and the maximum is 10. Hit Enter. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the table or the chart. So we've got audio and transcript up here, recruiter's evaluation of candidates. So let's go ahead and edit that. Design, add chart element, and we need a vertical axis. Recruiter's evaluation of candidates. All right. Recruiter's evaluation of candidates. Okay. And we've got the audio and the transcript down here. If we do the chart element and the data labels, let's see, or the legend, we can put the legend kind of wherever we want. I'm going to go ahead and put it at the top since that's the way it looks in the journal article. Now here you can choose different designs, you can change the colors, you can do whatever you want. If you were presenting this in black and white, you would probably want to use patterns. So you could do gradient, texture, probably not so much. More textures. Let's see. Pattern fill. Yeah, so if you were presenting this in black and white, you'd probably want to use patterns to really illustrate the different groups. But we're going full color here, so I'm just going to leave it the way it is. So now you've created what real researchers created with their data. All right. Real quick though, this says intellect, general impression, and hiring likelihood. Let's go ahead and fix that. The way to do that though, you have to right click, go to edit data, and you have to fix it here. So intellect, general impression, and hiring likelihood. And let's see if it fixed that. Check it out. It did it right there in our Word because it's linked to Excel. So it fixed it in both spots. Cool. All right. We're almost done. We're on number 9 now. So now we're going to compute the sample standard deviation and the mean for age. So you can then use the standardized function to compute z-scores. So if you go into here, let's go back to our original data. Let's go over here and let's just kind of label this the mean age equals and SD age equals. Just to kind of keep things straight and organized. So we're going to do equals AV. Remember, we did this for our mean scale scores, our average. Click on the first age in your data set, hold down the shift key, click on the last age in your data set. You'll see the range is represented here and just hit enter. Then to find the standard deviation equals STD, STD, sample. You don't want the population, you want the sample, and that's the one that has the .s. just double click that. Click on the first age, hold shift, click on the last age, hit enter. You've got your mean and your standard deviation for age. Let's just confirm that with the article. 30.85 years, 6.24. 30.85, 6.24. I'm feeling good. So now I want you to right-click the column next to age and hit insert. And we're going to create a new variable called age z-score. Let's go ahead and double click right here just so it auto fits the contents of that. Maybe even make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so we just hit enter, STA, and we want standardized. Because remember, z-score is a standardized score based on the mean and the standard deviation. So we double click that, and you'll see it kind of tells us all the things we need to do. So X means highlight the actual age for that person, comma. The mean, so this is important. Not only do you want to click the mean, but after you click it, you want to hit F4 on your keyboard. See those dollar signs pop up? That locks it in when you do the drag down. It'll keep that mean and standard deviation for all participants. It won't be trying to look for different values in different rows. So again, highlight the actual number for that participant, comma, click on the mean, hit F4 to lock it in, comma again, click your standard deviation, F4 to lock it in. You should see those dollar signs. Hit enter. Now, we don't have to do that for every person. Excel is smart. It's going to remember our formula and it's going to apply it to every participant in our data set. So we just click and drag down, and we've got our z-scores. There's some missing data for age, so you can just delete those hashtag values that weren't able to compute because we didn't have an age for those people. Now, in the assignment, so here's your S age, right? So your standard deviation was, and let's go ahead and round these. Right click, format cells, number. Let's go ahead and round to the hundredths place just because that's how it was rounded in the study. So I'm going to Control C to copy the standard deviation, put it into my assignment. Control, do this to keep text only so it doesn't mess up your formatting. I'm going to steal my mean too. Control C to copy, go in here, go to paste, and just paste the text only. Now I want you to explain the standard deviation on your own in plain English. So take a stab at that on your own. And now we've just used the standardized formula to generate z-scores for all participants' ages. Now I want you to sort your z-scores and identify if anybody has an extremely old score, right? If they're extremely old relative to the rest of survey participants. If so, what are their ages? And are any of the study participants extremely young? And if so, what are their ages? So let me show you how to sort real quick. And just remember that extreme is any score that's 2 standard deviations above or 2 standard deviations below the mean. Or in other words, any score that has a z-score of -2 or less would be extremely young, and any age that has a z-score of 2 or above would be extremely old relative to the rest of the sample. So now we're going to sort our data based on the z-score for age. So we're going to click the first z-score, hold down Shift, click the last z-score, go to Sort and Filter under the Home tab, and we're going to go ahead and sort smallest to largest. Make sure you click Expand the selection so that this person's data remains with them and it doesn't just reorganize this and then their z-scores don't match up with their original data. So make sure Expand the selection is there and hit Sort. And now you can quickly identify if there's any extremely high or extremely low z-scores, which would indicate somebody being extremely young relative to the rest of the sample or extremely old relative to the rest of the sample. You can put your answers here. Well, I hope you found this video useful and that you're going to use these skills beyond the context of our class in your everyday life in terms of, maybe your budget or maybe in your career as well.